Hygiene is cultural. And while those descendants of Europeans throughout the world and those descendants of Africans throughout the world have adopted different hygienic practices, we have to ask ourselves, where does that come from? Do you guys know that in West Africa, they had developed modern plumbing, hot water facilities in home, public bathrooms for everyone, not just the rich, and sanitation, while at the same time, the royal family and the court were peeing on walls, pooping on walls in the Palace of Versailles, and people in London were throwing their sewage outside of their windows into the city, and it was called the Big Stink.
Sensational.
So when we ask ourselves how we got to a place where people commonly say that Africa was undeveloped and thanks to European colonization, they brought modernity like development and sewage, that is a lie. Europeans told the world because they wrote the world's history in order to absolve themselves from what they actually did on the continent. In 1817, a British explorer named Thomas Bowditch was sent to Kumasi, which was then the capital of the Ashanti Empire in present-day Ghana. He was there on a diplomatic mission. He was so shocked when he got there, he had to write it down because he knew no one back home would believe him. What he found was a city divided into 77 wards, 27 named streets, some of them 100 yards wide, two-story buildings with indoor plumbing, toilets that were flush with boiling water on the second floor, meaning they had figured out water pressure, pipe systems, multi-level waste removal in 1817. That had probably been developed a century prior. And Bowditch notes that in Kumasi, also had public toilets on the outskirts of the city, meaning this just wasn't for wealthy people. These people were super cleanly and hygiene was important to them. He wrote that the streets never had sewage, never, unlike London. London was the capital of the empire that was about to colonize most of the world in the name of civilization. It used the Thames River as a toilet, human waste, animal waste, industrial runoff, all of it going into the same river that 8 private water companies are pulling drinking water from, effectively poisoning themselves and getting themselves sick. By 1857, 250 tons of raw sewage is entering the Thames every single day. And in the summer of 1858, a heat wave hit. The water level in the Thames dropped and centuries worth of waste starts baking in the sun. History calls this the Great Stink. Bowditch documented Ashanti plumbing in 1817. The Great Stink happened 41 years later. The British weren't more advanced, they were more aggressive. And that distinction matters because the entire justification for colonialism, the civilizing mission, the white man's burden of it all, rested on the idea that African people were primitive or savage, that they needed to be taught how to build, how to govern, how to live. But the Ashanti had named streets and indoor plumbing, while London was a public health catastrophe. The British were so averse to hygiene, they were throwing their own sewage into their drinking water supply. The savage Africans providing toilets for everyone, including the poor. When the British finally arrived, they burned Kumasi to the ground in 1874. They didn't destroy a primitive settlement. They destroyed a city that contradicted everything they claimed about Africa. They destroyed the evidence, but Bowditch wrote it down before they could burn it. They did the same thing with the Benin Wall, but the Benin Wall is one of the greatest wonders of human works to ever be built in the world, just second to the Great Wall of China. And the British couldn't get into the Benin Wall, so what did? They bombed it. I find it so disingenuous for people, especially those descendants of Europeans who always say that Africa was mud huts and no development, and that you guys would be in huts without us, you wouldn't have anything, when in fact, while the majority of Europe was in the dark ages, places like Timbuktu were thriving with universities and people trying to fly, and the African development was different, but it was developed in its own way. And Europeans only value Egypt, so they in their minds, the only developed place in Africa was Egypt and nowhere else. Meanwhile, the majority of the pyramids in the world are not even in Egypt. They're south of Egypt in Nubia. The playbook of colonialism is to rewrite history to make yourself the victor and absolve yourself from all of the pain you inflicted and the violence that you bestowed upon people. Coming into West Africa, burning the cities down, bombing the cities, destroying everything, flattening everything, and then documenting Africans of not having any development just so you can make a case for you going in and extracting resources from these people and human capital. Diabolical. But make sure you guys wash your legs today, wash your feet, wash your whole body from head to toe. Ciao, stay black.